All right, so let's go ahead and get started then on the first of these presentations. I'm going to get my presentation going here. Hopefully this records all right. Oh, you know what? I'm going to start at the beginning. Let's see here. Back up here at the beginning of this thing. What I want to do with all of these presentations really is just kind of go through quickly the high points with you, get you thinking about what we're trying to say in these presentations, and then kind of let you sort of sit on a little bit, think about it, and go back over the actual presentation in PowerPoint yourself to kind of get some of those details. It's going to drive you into a lot of the information out of the resources in the book and such. Goals for this week, really, what we want to do, like we said in the introduction, is understand how IT supports the business, get our arms around that. Understand IT is not a separate operating entity out there. It's there for a reason, support the business and support competitive position. Understand how data relates to information, knowledge, and then to competitive advantage, why we're here in the first place. And then understand how we want to approach setting up architecture of all that information for a business. Before we get going, there's some context I want you guys to dig into a little bit, and I won't go into it all here, but I'll bring it up for just so you can be thinking about it as you're reading the material, kind of dig into this a little bit. When we talk about a digital business, what they're talking about typically is a social web-focused business. So a business that has digital content that engages the customers through digital means, and really the flow of information is automatic, right, throughout this business. It's not paper copies of stuff floating around. What that means is that, yes, at the speed of light, information is there to make decisions. When we talk about business models, which we'll go over a little bit, some specific business models, what we mean there is how does this particular business make money? Now, think about it, there's different kinds of business, services businesses, material businesses, production businesses. There's something at the end of this thing that people are willing to pay money for. Now, however you get from the resources to that money is the business model. Digital business model is how you do that digitally. So think about the transfer of information from one side to the other and how you make money on that through that information technology. Customer experience is all the infrastructure that allows the customer to do business that they choose to with your organization. And when we talk about Internet of Things, what we're talking about there is all of the chips that are in all the devices these days, capabilities that are enabled for your business when all these physical things actually are connected via the internet. Before we start, I want to talk about, when we evolve into an IT organization, how are we really doing that? You start any business off, you're starting a garage business or you're starting a restaurant, someone's got a PC, right? You got to keep track of your information somewhere, all your tax records, all that. You get some device that you store all that on. As the business gets bigger, you get more and more needs for computing resources, and you kind of go up. As IT complexity increases, the connection with the business sort of decreases. So you get more and more computers. You hire someone specifically to do computer stuff. Well, that person hasn't really made decisions on the marketing side, so they don't really know that part of the business. And you start to get the siloing effect, right? So what happens in major enterprises is IT has become sort of its own silo, right? It functionally does what it's supposed to do, but it's not necessarily connected with a competitive enterprise itself and decisions that are made there. And so those as complexity increases, the information needs increase, but your connection with the business decreases too. And this is how IT has over time become less strategic than it should be. Initially, it's very strategic to your organization. As your organization grows, you lose that connection. That's what we need to do, is to get that back. And digitally changing the business is helping to do that. Bring strategic alignment. We get business integration, good business decisions directly out of the information services, and it's relevant. So what we're going to do this term really is break it into these weeks here. And you've seen the agenda. We're going to talk about an introduction. We're going to talk about the library of what it means to talk through IT and how to set these infrastructures up. We're going to go over some major technologies, talk about how we use those technologies for strategy for the business, go into EA specifically, and then talk about business cases as we're moving forward. How do we make the case for our technology? Then specifically talk about some key systems and enterprise systems and big data. We're going to address all these elements of that solution. So as an evolution of information, what you're really looking for here is wisdom to make the right decisions and make money, right, as a business. And that comes out of data, but it evolves. All activities create data, okay? Most of it's lost. It's left. We just don't do anything with it. What we retain can become information. And information then can be translated into knowledge. Knowledge is an asset. Used correctly, Knowledge then gives you competitive advantage. So let's think about some businesses. I got 3 on the left here. I got a restaurant up there on the top, got a hospital, and a big manufacturing company on the bottom there. Everything that you do in any business, you're going to take those things on the left, the marketing, raw materials, labor, your pricing. You're going to apply these kinds of techniques to it: analytics, supply chain systems, HR systems, enterprise resources, accounts payable. And at the end of all those things, what you're doing is getting the information out of those, applying them through those methods. You're going to get greater market share, lower cost, better resources, smarter pricing, and both of those to create bigger margins and more efficient operations. Those are the goals of using that information. How do we do that? There's 2 ways. You use the technology and you use the support. So start with our top model there, the restaurant. What are we going to have? We're going to have personal computers, financial software, point of sale system probably. You're going to be archiving some of that data and use web analytics, really, your website for your restaurant, to see who's coming, who's not, what zip codes they're out of, where you need to target your coupons, that kind of stuff. Support that you're going to pull into this typically is going to be a lot of off-the-shelf software, really, to run it. And then probably some contracted support or part-time support to run the information systems. Maybe you're moving now into cloud storage and using some of those technologies that are available in the cloud to help run your business. If you go into that second business, now we're talking about a hospital, a little bit bigger now. So your technologies are going to be a little more specific. You have best-of-breed applications for clinical systems, finance, radiology, transportation, hospitality, all those things. You're going to integrate all those systems using some sort of middleware capabilities. You're going to have some significant archive data and legal responsibility to hold those for more years than just the fiduciary responsibilities that come with any sort of business. Network infrastructure throughout the facility, telecom infrastructure throughout the facility, and for all the associated people. Web analytics, again, to look at the patient base. What kind of support we're pulling in? Now we're bringing in some contracted software support probably to help with us. We probably have internal IT folks now, a dedicated data center, likely at some level, and some disaster recovery contracts. So we're a business that needs to stay open, right? So we got to have some sort of technology that says we have failover capability. Get to the bottom one here. You're talking about big manufacturing companies. Now you're dealing with robotics, design, CAD/CAM systems, enterprise resources, global supply chains, those kinds of technologies. Support's going to be a lot of contracted still, but now you're going to look at those ERPs, big systems. You're bringing in consulting companies to help with that stuff. Still have internal IT, but now it's for development and for support. You're going to have probably dedicated data center and probably some on-premises cloud systems set up, depending on how you've architected the business. However you do it, your business needs to align with your customers. If you don't keep up, you'll wind up like Blockbuster and a lot of retail shops that just can't maintain the business models the way they used to. Not every business model is digital. Now let's keep that in mind. But every modern business needs to have digital incorporated into it to maintain its effectiveness, to maintain its efficiency, and to maintain its competitiveness. The business processes basically are going to be broken into 3 components, right? You start with your inputs, your materials, your data, your knowledge, your expertise, your people. Then you bring in the activities. What are they actually doing? What are your processes that you're executing? And at the end of that, you're going to have deliverables, products, services, plans, actions, all that. What we're trying to do with digital is to make that all as efficient as possible, right? So that you can do it faster than your competitors. You can do it better than your competitors. You give you that competitive advantage. That's where digital transformation really is the key. You want to have both short-term components, like if you do that really well, you're going to get market presence, you're going to get good capital, you're going to get good knowledge. But what you really want to do from a competitive advantage standpoint is build the infrastructure of your information flow so that you can maintain that competitive advantage over time. That's how really good businesses stay successful over long periods of time. They have those long-term components. They use digital to become agile. They use it to become responsive. They use it to become flexible, to change the business products quickly. They can adapt to the changing customer quickly. That's the competitive model that you want to get to. We'll discuss a little bit in your book the Porter's competitive forces model, which really looks at these 5 elements. You've got the threat of new competitors. You've got bargaining power of some of your suppliers against you. You got bargaining power of your customers and your buyers against you. And then there's a threat of substituting other products and services that kind of take over your market. And there's just competitive rivalry, really, among existing firms in the industry. All of these can threaten your short-term competitive advantage, right? The short-term one that we built. But if your long-term competitive advantage is there because you've digitized the system and you're reactive and you can adapt to the changes within the environment, then your competitive strategies turn these threats and you can turn around them and you can maneuver through them as you move forward. That's how successful businesses use digital to stay ahead. So your IT strategy, since it's a long-term competitive advantage we're going after, the IT strategy is going to be key to that business success long-term. Can't afford to silo IT into some technical support role or some cost center that we just carve off a certain amount to pay for the resources year after year. It has to be part of the planning, has to be part of the strategy, has to be part of how your business moves forward. To do that, then we got to think, all right, how are we managing our information? Remember, for information to be useful, it has to be, number one, it has to be understandable. You got to understand it. It's got to be the right information, it's relevant. It's got to be there in time to be able to act on it. It's got to be right, correct, right? Because you don't want bad information. Then they'll make you bad decisions off of that. And we got to protect it. It's got to be secure. We can't make, if it's our information, we don't want all our competitors to have it. They'll make decisions off of it as well. And because of decades of different investments in IT systems, the reality is, despite what some books will tell you in terms of what the system should be, you're dealing with a set of systems that are already in place. They're probably siloed. Information's been lost or bypassed. You got bad interfaces between them. It's not necessarily standardized. Those are the things that we need to deal with. Those are realities, right? Good information management system is going to have to address all of these issues. Enterprise architecture, we'll get into a little bit later, but in the course. But basically what we're talking about there is that, all right, if we need to manage that information, let's look at our enterprise, the organization, the sub-activity or whatever it is that we're looking at as a whole that we need to get information managed through. Then the architecture says, all right, what's the analysis and documentation of that enterprise in terms of current and future states for strategy, business, and technology perspective? The EA puts all that information for the business in the hands of business leaders. And it says, here's how we're going to manage the information. Here's the architecture of the system that will allow us to be competitive in the future going forward. A lot of back and forth on the state of enterprise architecture, but at its core, what we're talking about is just understanding the environment that you're in and being able to build a system that can support the entire business. It's created by basically combining your strategy, your business, and your technology. Look at the pyramid over there, and that's what we're talking about. There's a technology level that underpins everything. There's a business level that says, all right, how are we going to use those, right, to advance the business? Then there's a strategic level that says, what leading indicators am I getting out of my data that allow me not only to manage the business, but to make those decisions going forward that will get us in the best position to advance the business. It's an authoritative reference. It's a provider of designs of future states, and it takes all of your technology planning should take place within the context of your enterprise architecture. So that's a quick review of what we've got. Let's go over our goals. We want to understand how IT supports the business, and we got that. Understand how it relates to information, knowledge, and then on to competitive advantage, and we got that. And then understand how we want to approach setting up this architecture for a business. Those are key elements of this presentation, and go ahead and review the presentation, and then as we go through this module this week, keep those in mind. That's the foundation of what we want to understand from an IT operations standpoint.